Hello and welcome. This is Jay Billig. I'm an international best-selling author of Architect of Being, Easily Create Your Dream Life from the Foundation Up. And I'm here today with Leslie Picchietti. Leslie is a very interesting woman. She launched Inspire Bliss Coaching and Consulting, a company that provides life and leadership development programs, coaching and training to enhance the lives of people and the productivity of organizations. Her true passion is right there in her company name to inspire others to live life of joy. She is also a lead trainer for the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, sits on the board of directors for Chicago Jazz Philharmonic, where she runs a 3-week summer camp in Chicago and hosts the popular radio show Holy Shift on Life Coach Chat Channel. Leslie, welcome. I am so happy to have you here today.
Oh my goodness, Jay, thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here. And I love that you introduced me as a very interesting woman. I'm intrigued on who that is.
Well, I am interested to find out even more about you. So I'm going to start out. Was there an event or a particular moment in your life that led you to this path?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I feel so blessed to, when I look back over, especially career-wise, the things that I've been able to do, and I have changed careers many times, and just was like, oh, you know what, this is what I want to do, and I was passionate about it, and then that's what I would do, and oh, this is what I want to do, and I was passionate about it, and then I would move that forward. And what happened is some of my personal life, I call it like I was in my hot mess moments. No judgment, just there was stuff going on. And on the radio one day, I heard the announcer say, "What would you do if you weren't afraid?" And that was such a pivotal moment for me because I've moved a lot of things forward in my life, even in spite of fear. And yet very loudly, I answered with, I would do the coaching program that a friend of mine had done a year prior. And it wasn't even on my radar consciously. And I actually said that out loud in the car during my commute. And I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? It startled me. And so I thought, okay, that there's something to that something inside me is resonating and registering with wanting to do this. And it was during a period of time in my life when, I didn't really have the time or the money or the energy, but it's in those moments of clarity that, I had just set the intention. I was going to do whatever it took to make that happen. And that's what I did. And that one moment changed the trajectory of my life in ways that I still look back and think, holy cow, it's only been about 8 years. Like, I can't believe this has happened. So it's been super exciting. So that is how I got into coaching. Even though I was already doing some teaching and training, this is, man, I love this so much I can't even stand it. Coaching,
I think that's
training.
really, yeah.
Oh,
You totally hit on it. The ability to ask that question. If you had never heard that question, what would you do if you weren't afraid, and even considered not being afraid to do something? It just sets you up for, wow, you mean I don't have to be afraid? And then, you sort of go forward from there, right?
Well, yes, and that's when, we all get so stuck in the how. We want something and then we get stuck in the, well, how am I going to do it? And that's what trips us up. So when we can release ourselves from the how and just really focus on what is it that we want truly. And I find it fascinating with my students, with my clients, with anyone in my life, that so many of us never are really asked, what do you want really?
Mm-hmm.
Not what do your parents want for you? What does a significant other want? What do your friends think you should do? What does your boss want for you? What do you want? And so, yeah, it's when we can remove ourselves. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I was in some serious debt. I was working in a nonprofit job that I loved, but it was nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't. It was like, okay, how am I going to, really make a financial, how was I going to do it financially? How was I going to do it with time when I was working several jobs? And so, yeah, it's when we can release that how, it can get really exciting. And then the how just happens. Mm-hmm. And I know that for some people that sounds woo-woo, like just allow it to unfold. And yet, when we allow it, it truly unfolds. And it's fascinating.
It's true. I feel that same way about what we're creating with New Thought Forum, that it's, there have been those moments where I've been in the, deep in the weeds and, asking, how on earth is this going to come together? What, and it has only been when I've gotten away from that question that I've allowed it to move forward, that it truly has unfolded in this miraculous way. And I couldn't be more thrilled with that. You also,
love that.
in your work, I've noticed you refer to clarity. It's a big theme that comes out with what you're teaching and bringing out there to the work that you do with people. What are some examples of, attitudes and behaviors that can help people gain that clarity that we're looking for?
Whew. How much time do you have, Jay? That's a great question. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of where to start with that. So, let's just break down clarity for a second. I think clarity is. See, I'm not even clear on clarity. No, clarity. We're so often just reacting to our life. Things happen, and the funny thing is, for some of us, like, oh, I'm such a great multitasker, and things just come, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing that, and I'm doing this, and we almost are proud of it. And we become these master reactors, and I'm not judging anyone and anywhere in their life. I want to make that really clear. And I too had become a master reactor. And yet, when we're reacting, that's when all of a sudden 20 years pass and we say, oh, well, what am I doing here? Or 10 years pass, or 50 years pass. And we weren't really a part of it. So, that comes into reacting versus responding. And I feel like we can't really respond consciously to our life unless we have clarity on what we want. And so clarity can be huge. Do you really want to stay married to this person, or do you want to completely change your job, or do you want to get up and move halfway across the world? It can be big things. But clarity can also start with very little steps. Look at what you're doing day to day. Is it things that you truly want to do? Are you living in a world of a lot of have-tos and need-tos and shoulds? We're shooting on ourselves all day long, and we're shooting on other people all day long.
Uh-huh.
And that's sort of the energy of that we're not at choice. But we can't be at choice if we don't have clarity about what we want. so we get in this cycle and this pattern that, you know, it's almost like we need a Control-Alt-Delete button. You know, we kind of need the, like, how do we power down and then repower back up so that we can say, okay, so wait a minute. And it's, I find it interesting even when people ask me about coaching, because, you know, coaching definitely has the interpretation of it, I think, has changed over, especially the last 5 years or so, where it used to be like, oh, you know, coaching was for either people who were a total hot mess, and again, that is not a judgment. Mm-hmm. You know, that really needed a lot of help in. Yeah, exactly.
We're all there. You know, depends on the day, right? We're all there.
Oh my God. Amen to that. And even in the workplace, it was always kind of the last ditch effort for an employee. Well, you know what? We're going to get you a coach, and then if that doesn't work, you're out of here. And even that has shifted to, it's more about, no, how can we step into our potential? And yet we can't step into our potential until we have that clarity. So going all the way back to your original question of the clarity piece, it's just, for us, it's really about simple things like understanding your values. And I know, Jay, that I sent you my values assessment, and there are a million values assessments online, you know, but how important is it to know even your values? And until we take a step back, sometimes we think we know our values until we really look at it. And that's one of the things that drives us and motivates us in our life. And that's also when those values aren't being met, that's also like, you know, when we're feeling, you know, it's you're upset with someone, it might be because a value need is not being met. And so then we just know ourselves so much better and know what our triggers are, so that then we can choose differently better of a response. And we can, and I don't want to say choose differently in the future, not better, because that's a judgment. Just choose on how it might serve us. So, oh my gosh, I'm going on and on, blah, blah, blah. I get too excited, Jay.
I know. Well, this excites me too. I'm just listening. I'm like, wow, I just want to take this all in. And you talk about using a unique blend of compassion, boldness, and humor to shift from a place of hesitation to a more positive and constructive center. Does that fit in with that clarity? Is that the sort of your methodology for helping people to gain that clarity?
You know, definitely. I mean, first of all, you know, I put humor in there because fun is one of my top values. Shocking. And so whatever I do, it's got to be fun or I don't want to do it. Now, when I share that with people and they're like, well, not everything can be fun. Well, how true is that? And so, you know, I even bring up and I got this, I believe, truly from my family. You know, we when we get together, we have funtivities. Like, that's what we do together. And so even, you know, on one of the saddest days of my life, losing my father, you know, at the funeral, something happened where my whole family, you know, we're a big Italian family, and we got into this laughing fit at the funeral. And I knew that was my dad making that happen. And so I'm not saying that like you're sitting in a meeting and, you know, to be disrespectful or to not take things seriously. I'm just saying that's what works for me. And so even when I do my corporate trainings, and, you know, I don't have a corporate background, Jay. You know, I was in nonprofit. I spent 16 years as a jazz vocalist and band leader, touring and recording, and I have zero corporate background. And yet I do so much corporate training. And I truly believe it's because I'm out of the norm of what they're used to. I'm bringing Play-Doh and bubbles and getting them out of their comfort zone. And, and making it fun, because so many of us aren't having fun anymore, especially at work. And so that's the humor part, and that might be the boldness part too, where I'm going to call people out. I do have a lot of compassion, but I'm going to stretch people out of their comfort zone. So I'm going to tell it like it is, but very sweetly. And I'll help. I'll support you through it, but I'm not going to let you kid yourself anymore. And so I think that is really, moving people when we talk about and I know that's so verbagey, like to move to a more constructive center, like as I'm writing my website, but it's having people just, once again, I continue going back to, what do people want? When we can be more engaged, more excited, that leads to the productivity piece. That when we can make it fun, when we really want to be doing something, even if it's a have to, how can we shift it to a want to? And sometimes people get confused on that as well. Well, I have to do this, like I have to do my taxes. Well, no, we're always a choice. I don't have to do my taxes. There's just consequences if I don't.
Yes.
But when I can choose it, now for me to get through my taxes, how do I make it a want to? I bring fun into doing my taxes. And I'm not even going to tell you how I do that, but that's how we can shift things from the have to the want to. So even when I'm working with kids and I'm teaching them about choice and about leadership, and they'll say, Miss Leslie, I have to clean my room. And I'll say, well, you have to? And they're like, yes, or, my mom is going to, be mad. I'll say, well, and then I'll teach them about consequences. And then I say, so what would make you want to clean your room? And then they kind of think about it. And then I say, when we're looking at choices, what if you were to clean your room even before your mom asked you? What do you think would happen? And they kind of think for a minute, and and then they say, well, I think it would freak her out. I say, and then they smile and they get like giddy. I say, okay, so that could be one of your choices. Not that it has to be. So it's looking at how can we make it? And, a lot of times, especially like in corporate or even with your kids, it's about, kind of dangling the carrot. Like, if you clean your room, we'll go to the water park.
Right.
And I don't want it to sound like we're, bribing our kids, or, we even do that in corporate. Like, well, if you get this done, you'll get the bonus type of thing. But then the outcome or what's afterwards is what people are engaged with, when we really want to be engaged in the present. And so that's how can we shift to the want to. I'm not saying don't give me the bonus. I'm not saying don't take me to the water park. But what's in it for me in this moment? And even our communication with each other, when we can add that to what would make it a want to, it's just more engaging. We're setting ourselves up for more success by doing it that way, if that makes sense.
It absolutely
Again, I'm
does.
all over the place. I get too excited.
Right. Well, there's a lot, this is our whole lives we're talking about. So it makes sense that it's all over the place. How do you handle people that you encounter who are skeptical of this way of thinking, who might be, just being introduced to sort of the concepts, or maybe they've even been at it for a long time or coming from a corporate world, and this is, as you said, I use that term too, a little bit woo-woo.
Yep.
So how do you handle those objections and, help people shift a little bit?
Another great question, Jay. I was actually in a meeting yesterday, and someone had, they want to bring me on into their company, and they were like, okay, now there are going to be some people that are skeptical, and I think they were worried about that I would say I don't want to work with them, and I just said, great, love it, love that. And here's the thing, if someone is skeptical, great, ask questions about it. I'm not asking anyone to believe anything or do anything. All I am here to do is give people a little more information and maybe a new way of looking at something. And then, once again, they're a choice to get to do what they want with that. I think for me, through IPEC, the school that I got my coaching certification and where I am now a trainer, we have an assessment, and it's called the Energy Leadership Index Assessment, or the ELI. And it's fascinating because, like, people out there do the Myers-Briggs and the DISC, and those are awesome, and those give us great information about ourselves. A lot of times, however, if you take the Myers-Briggs when you're 20 and when you're 50, it's a personality assessment, so you're getting the same results. And then we're kind of taught to work within that. You are this, and people will probably say, I'm an MQRT or whatever it is. I've never done it, so I don't know my letters. And then we work within those constraints. And my assessment is actually an attitudinal assessment. So it gives a quantitative view of how people show up energetically. Now that too is woo-woo, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll just say, especially in the corporate place, it's just, how can we look at your current beliefs, perceptions, attitudes, behaviors that are working for you and that are getting in your way? And so when people can see that in it, they love charts and graphs. So when I start that with a skeptic, and it's so accurate that I can then talk about the stuff that trips them up before they say one word, they sometimes get so freaked out that I have a superpower. That I'm looking in the crystal ball, and that I've got, I've had people say, like, do you have a camera in my office or in my house? And I think when you're able to really say to someone, hey, this looks like this is tripping you up, and it might show up in this way, and how true is that? That they just kind of are like, well, that is true. And I think the key for skeptics is just creating a safe space and acknowledging and validating that it's okay to be skeptical. I'm not here to judge anybody. And so it's just kind of asking questions of, again, what do they want, and what is what they're currently doing getting them what they want? Because a lot of times, if they want something, they're not currently getting it. And right. So what they are doing isn't currently working. And so, so that's kind of how we can, because again, I'm here to take you on a journey if you choose to. And if you don't choose it, then I'm here to possibly plant some seeds. And maybe you don't, choose to engage in raising your consciousness, becoming aware, whatever it is. I don't care what you call it. And maybe you're, some people aren't there yet. And that's okay too. We're all on this life path and this life journey in our own time.
Yeah. How do you inspire people to step out of their comfort zone in that situation?
A lot of times it might depend on what I'm going to say the venue is. So like when I'm speaking or when I'm training, I'm going to use a lot of personal examples, not only my personal examples, but examples of clients and students. When I'm coaching, like when I'm doing one-on-one coaching, it's so interesting, Jay, because even the biggest skeptics, I just think that fades away. And maybe, maybe because I create the safe space for them, that I'm not judging them and they're questioning it. Perhaps it's just because I'm asking inquisitively, like, what would it feel like if you believed this? What would be different in your life? To just begin to kind of open up those possibilities. So I think maybe it's the opening up of the possibilities that are current and tangible to them in that moment. And it's not this far off, when you raise your consciousness, you become, in kind of this huge overarching undertaking. It's more like, let's just crack open the door on what it would look like for you and your life in this moment.
What are
So
some
maybe it's
questions
making
you
that
ask? What
real
are some
personal.
questions you
Yeah,
ask
sorry.
sorry to cut you off. It just like raised,
No,
all of a sudden,
perfect.
like, oh my gosh, I've got more questions. What are some questions you ask that really help people to um, be real in that moment, or to sort of show what they're really made of? Do you know what I'm saying by that? It's not, you can ask all kinds of
Yeah.
questions about people, or small talk is, that's like
Yep.
easy to engage in small talk in pretty much every situation. But how do you get to the core? Like, what do you ask people to get them to reveal themselves, if you will?
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome to the core energy coaching process that High Tech teaches, because that's just it. How do we get to the core? And the core is going to be about asking those questions that dig into the actual person. The way that we normally communicate is we get very caught up in the story. So if you were to come to me, Jay, and say, I'm struggling with the communication with a sibling or my boss or whatever it is, a lot of times the questions are about the story. Well, what did you say to the sibling? Well, what did they say? And well, what else? And we get kind of caught up in that. And that then takes us away, like you said, that's the surface stuff that takes us away from the core. So it's really about asking the questions to the individual. What are they feeling around this? What is it that they want the communication to be? What is truly bugging them? And I think that even when sometimes someone is like venting around, oh my gosh, and then they did this, and then they did this, and blah, 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 blah. And, we want people to do that. We want the energy to be coming up and out, as long as it's productive, right? Energy is just energy. Emotions is just energy in motion. We want those emotions to come up and out, but then once they do, we want to get into okay, what's really going on here? And sometimes that's the question.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing, even though I'm very chatty on this call, I always say one of our greatest coaching skills is to shut up, just be quiet. So I might ask someone, what's really bugging you here? Or what's really going on here? And then I might be quiet for what seems like 10 minutes, because I want them to process that out, because no one has probably asked them that, because they're getting caught up in the story. So that's how we begin to get to the core. And then the questions just sort of follow along the path of staying with the person. If someone's scared about X, Y, Z, okay, so what are you scared about? Well, where do you think that came from? And what's the worst that can happen? And what's the greatest thing that can happen? And so it's really staying in the moment for the person.
Okay. That is really wonderful. This just gets me more and more excited about having you be part of New Thought Forum, because I know that it's going to open a whole new world for people as they get to experience you and each other through you.
I think for me, the biggest thing in my work is that Yes. Do we want to inspire people? Absolutely. And inspire and help people learn how to inspire themselves and others. And, it continues on. For me, it's also about giving people those practical tools to do it. Because a lot of times we go to a talk, or we go to a training, or we hear someone, or we read a book, and we get really inspired in that moment. And then we're like, well, now what? And we don't know what to do to move anything forward. I want to turn the tables for a minute. What is having you step into creating this?
Well, what inspired me to do it was meeting people out there in the world. I was like at various conferences, and I was at a Bob Proctor event actually, and I had met so many people that just had phenomenal stories and just these outstanding things that they were doing in the world, things that they wanted to do in the world, and new ways that they wanted to show up in the world. And I just thought there needs to be a place where it's open for anybody to be part of sharing their truth, sharing their connection to the flow of energy that is all that is, if you know what I mean. Because we're all connected.
I
We're all
do.
connected to
That's
each other.
yummy.
There's a constant, we can't be disconnected from energy because everything is energy. And there's
Yes.
no lack of wisdom that we have individually. We're all tuned into it, and the words that come out of everybody's mouth are wise. They are by nature, they are that way. And so that to the extent that we can see each other as vessels of wisdom, then we can all take from that and share that. And so I wanted to create a place that was open to anybody to share that wisdom that they're receiving, and be able to inspire others to do the same. So that as they walk away from New Thought Forum, all of the activators that participate in it, that all of those people truly feel like they have something they can work with, and that their lives will be different because of having participated, and that because their lives are different, it makes their communities different, and because their communities different, it makes our world different. And it shifts. Truly, I think we are on a path toward greater awareness and understanding of all of these things, but we've got a long way to go. We have however many billion people on the planet right now, and we're just beginning this awakening, and that we can do something about making that awakening happen for more and more people. That's what I want to do. So the idea to do it in little snippets is that it helps the people who are there as presenters. Not everybody's going to connect with every presenter. We know that, but they're going to connect with some of them, and they can, those that connect with you, Leslie, will be able to, tap into what you're offering, and those that connect with other presenters will be able to tap into that. And so it just builds this bridge between people so that they are supported, and creates this community that shows them, wow, there's so many options, and I can get this wisdom. Or helps them feel confident too that they are a voice of universal wisdom for themselves and for their communities and for the world. So that's what it's all about.
Oh my gosh. So fantastic. So excited. And yeah, I mean, it does even, and people will say, oh, you talk about, awareness and consciousness, and that we're all connected. And yet then people see some of, the things that go on in the world that are generated by fear.
Mm-hmm.
And, this helps to shift that as well. Because there are so many people living in a fearful state. And again, I'm not talking politics and I'm not talking judgment here. I'm just talking factual. When we get in, but when we're living in that fearful place, not but, and when we live in that fearful place, that's when we become more closed off to that bigger picture and the opportunity to grow and that greater good that we're all connected, because we kind of have those, the blinders on, that it's just right here. So I love what you said of it, like the butterfly effect, or, however old your listeners are, it's like that, Clairol commercial or whatever commercial that she told two friends and she told two friends and so on and so on. And it builds out, little by little, and love that, and love being a part of something with like-minded people, and with wanting to shift, from the hate to the love, and I don't even want to say that, just from maybe not knowing to knowing. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's a better way to put that. And
I have one last question for you. And is there one thing that you would say really fuels your passion? Because you're obviously a very passionate, and you've got all of this, this really, I just find it fascinating background with this mix of things that you've done in your life. What fuels your passion that you keep on going and keeps you engaged every day?
I think bottom line, what fuels my passion, again, is when I meet my two top core values, and that's fun and connection with others. And so, however I can be connected, whether I'm running my jazz camp for kids in Chicago and watching their brilliance, or working with, working moms that are struggling to maintain balance, or in a corporate workplace that wants to shift their culture, all across the board. It's just, I feel so blessed to just simply be a part of their journey and support them however I can in their continued growth and excitement. That really is what gets me excited. And, having a fun time doing it and breaking out into song and dance whenever I
can. I'm right there with you. That ties in so perfectly with the mission of New Thought Forum, which is first and foremost, we purposely did this, went through a whole process of creating this mission to have fun and transform lives, creating a community empowered to uplift each other and the world. So in that, it's that we definitely wanted fun to be front and center. And Leslie, you are the center of fun.
Oh my God, I'm stealing your mission statement because it's fantastic.